Okay, Ian, this is Derek with PilotCity. How's it going? Thanks for joining us today on Zoom and YouTube Live. How you doing?
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining up here. And I'm super excited about talking to you. As we meet new employers in our program, it's always exciting just to understand more of all the variety of different amazing things going on, not just in the world, but also in sustainability specifically, and how we're advancing communities and advancing our efforts around, reducing, carbon emissions and so forth. So super excited about talking to you. And I know that we had a conversation with your team member, Cecilia. So I know that you may not be fully warmed up, right, on PilotCity. So
That's correct. Yep.
Great. So that's no problem because I give this baseline all the time, just as you give the baseline on PowerNot all the time. So I'll give you a little warm up right now on what this program is all about. So PilotCity, just to give you an understanding, we started the organization about 6 years ago when I came back home from school and discovered that my hometown here in San Leandro was transforming itself into a city of innovation. They installed a fiber optic broadband loop. They hired a chief innovation officer within the city government, and they were on this economic development initiative to build a city to become innovative. Little did we all know, San Leandro, was really never on the map, so to speak. It was always considered as a community south of Oakland or nearby, some of the bigger cities. And so I got excited as a hometown kid from here and wanted to get involved. And I knew in an instant that I wanted to get right in and spend 110% of my time building my hometown into a city of innovation. But what we heard a lot about, Ian, was a lot about attracting of startups into the community and a lot about attracting of talent into the community. And very little about the people who are from the community to be the ones that help build the future of the community.
Okay.
So that prompted us, how do we build a city of innovation with the people from there? And San Leandro, we don't have a university, we don't have a college, we don't have a community college. The highest level of talent that's being produced in any particular institution is our high school. And so that's where we started. We said, okay, let's see what these young citizens can do in the community to have them become the engine that builds an innovative city and community. So we started looking at career pathway programs, and we discovered that internship programs are kind of the gold standard of paving pathways for young people. And so we decided to tackle that big problem of how do we scale internship programs and have young people put their foots in the doors so they can actually start to make an impact, right, in their community. And we discovered that when we ask employers like yourself, like, hey, Ian, what do you think about taking on a high school kid to work for PowerNot, right? Your first reaction might be, what are they going to do? Is this a babysitting job? Is this just a give back program? What is it, right? That's usually the response we got from employers. So they usually say no more to high school interns.
No is always the easiest answer in business.
You know what? It's a good answer. I find myself being more and more conservative over time and saying no a lot more too. So I think it's a valid answer. Your camera for some reason turned off for some reason. Don't know why. There it is.
All right.
So we wanted to solve that no, right? We were trying to get to a yes more. So we had to figure out, how can young people, before they even come to you, deliver value, right? So we said, hey, there's a bunch of kids in classrooms learning concepts theoretically about environmental science, about engineering, about computer science, about biology, about all these things in classrooms. How do we have them build value for companies and employers while they're in the classroom, and then win opportunities to work with those companies? So that's what started us on the pathway of iterating on this program that we're having PowerNot join, which is to have students build projects for employers while in school, to then win internships with those companies, to then go into the internship and further execute on those same projects that they already started. So hopefully that was a good warm up to give you context on what PilotCity is and what our program's all about. And as of right now, we're a program that had about 1,200 students in the program this school year. And right now we have about 221 interns working for 32 companies, from a mayor to city governments like City of Antioch, City of San Leandro, to organizations like Kaiser Permanente, health education, to computer science organizations, to sustainability divisions within city governments. These are all employers in our program, and which is why we've been a little busy in the last month or so getting this up and running. Any questions, Iain?
No, understand it. Yep.
Okay, great. So let's talk about Powernaut. Let's talk about you, frankly, not even Powernaut, because there's always a story before the brand, right? So what's this accent you have, and where'd you come from, and how did you get here, and why are you on this journey, and how much anxiety have you been building a company? Like, what's your story? How did you get started?
Well, I live in a small town called Fremont, so that's
My
my
mom,
story.
my
and I,
my
and I
my mom
commute.
and dad, I don't know if you eat Chinese fast food, okay, but my mom and dad had this spot called Dragon Barbecue Express on Fremont Boulevard for at least 20 years. So if you ever
Well,
went there, that's where we are. They could have probably been a customer of Paranot.
well, I was born and bred in the UK. Went to one of the London universities. Ended up working for HP, Hewlett Packard in Scotland. They transferred me to the US. They thought I was a skilled guy and could add value to what they were doing here. My background is communications when I was with HP, and I came here to integrate communications into computers. And they figured that was a few years ahead of its time, and it was about 15 years ahead of its time, and we should have done it. But and so I left HP and came down to Silicon Valley, worked for a number of startup companies that all went belly up, and decided to start my own company. That was 37 years ago, and Powernaut is my 6th company. So, and my last. My last.
I'm starting to feel that I'm probably on my first formal one, but probably my second or third iterated one. So, but what made you want to start a company in the beginning?
I just figured I could do things better than the people who were paying me to do other things. And so arrogance, I guess.
I love it.
Arrogance, yeah. You don't start a company for money. If you start a company intending to make money, then you won't succeed. You start a company just to prove that you can do it. And primarily it's to prove to yourself that you can do it, not to prove to anybody else. But yeah, you just feel that you know things better than those who've been paying you to do things. You don't steal their ideas. That doesn't make sense. You have a different idea and you go and do your own idea. And yeah, so that's why you start a company.
What I I was feeling suffocated in my 9 to 5 job is what prompted me. And I just had ideas that spawned from my head, and I just felt like I was dying inside working my 9 to 5. But I tell people that I quit my 9 to 5 so I can work 24/7. So
Well,
it's
now,
really
yeah,
kind
I
of
was going to say I don't work 9 to 5. I work 5 till 9, 5 in the morning till 9 at night. So yeah, it's very different being starting a company. Then of course, I mean, if you're super intelligent and you've got the right idea and you can be like Mark Zuckerberg and get lots of money, but I don't have his skills or his ideas, so I slog it out.
So you mentioned six organizations that you've helped to start.
Yep.
Could you give us a little tour of that evolution of the companies and your thought process between each one? You don't have to do all 6, but give us a little tour
No,
of
I
how
mean,
you
but
got.
one was a huge success. Zarak was a huge success. I sold it for a huge amount of money. The company is still in existence in its form. That was 2000. I sold the company. And then I started another company where I lost all the money from the other company. And so Zarek was in telecommunications test equipment, and the other company I started where I lost all my money was in voice over IP phone systems. That company's still in existence in a totally different format. And then I decided to get out of telecommunications, and I've always been an environmental nut, and so something in the environmental space took my fancy, and this was a market need. I was talking to actually people at the Hyatt Regency in Santa Clara and trying to sell something else, which they didn't want to buy. And I asked, what other problems do you have? And he took me around the back and he showed me his dumpster with all the waste food in it and all the flies that were gathering around it, and said, hey, if you've got an answer to getting rid of this waste food out of the dumpster, then I'll buy the product from you. And that was 2009, 2010 or so. And we shipped the first product to him a few years later. There was an early model of what we sell now. That was our first generation product. We're now shipping our 7th generation product. Things have moved. We've learned a lot since then. It was a subject about which we knew absolutely nothing, or I knew nothing when I started the company. And yeah, I mean, it's a product that requires a huge amount of skills. What the product does is it digests waste food. So the product sits in the kitchen. In the case of the Hyatt Regency, it went into their kitchen. And instead of the waste food going out to the landfill, it goes into our machine, and our machine digests it, sending the output as water down the drain. When you send organic waste to a landfill, it gets buried and decomposes in the absence of oxygen, creating methane. Methane is 84 times worse for the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. When you put the waste into our machine, it degrades into carbon dioxide, which is part of the natural carbon cycle. So it's not contributing to global warming. And so it's saving the customer money. It's improving their operations because it's in the kitchen, it's clean and hygienic, and they don't need to put it in dumpster. And it saves the planet enormously by getting this stuff out of the landfill. But obviously, it requires a huge number of skills, not only electronics, but cloud computing, mechanical engineering, biochemical engineering, packaging, because these things are big and heavy. The heaviest machine weighs over 2 tons, nearly 3 tons when it's packaged. So there's a lot of learning on it, and so with each of my companies that I've started has been something different. You don't just try and do the same thing over again. It's something different. So you learn something, you're doing something new, and in this one certainly contributing to the preservation of the environment.
So that's exactly what I was going to go back to, is you went from telecom and IT to some extent to a space of deep hardware, and that learning experience, I'm sure it was just basically purely learning, but hiring probably the right people as well. What do you think actually contributes to your intent to learn, to just go for the next goal? Because you actually went straight into Hyatt, said, and proposed another solution, but then you asked them, hey, do you have any other problems? And then that's what they pointed to, and you said, okay, well, maybe I'll do that, right? So what drives you?
So when the Hyatt Regency said, hey, need something to get rid of waste food, I looked around for what was on the market. Was there something on the market? And in Korea and Japan, these machines have been around for 30 years or so. And so the first thing I did is I set up a trip to Korea, and I went to see half a dozen different manufacturers of these types of machines to see whether or not we could just get a machine from Korea and resell it in this country, and then build up from there. That didn't work out. But we found out, well, I found out what was necessary there to be able to build the product and know what was necessary to be able to service the market in this country. So yeah, and it's not trivial. It's not trivial building this product. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, geez, you have so much to dig into. I don't even know where to dig in, because you can talk about you and your drive, which I think most students are most interested in, right? Is because there's a lot of potential talent inside these communities that are untapped or don't have the resource to be tapped. So I guess I want to go back to your source of your spirit, right? What did you discover about yourself and when, and what was it that allowed you to be driven to accomplish these goals that you're setting for yourself, at every point in your life?
Well, it is tough being the boss, because there are always problems every day cropping up in the company. Everything from trivial things, we've run out of toilet paper, all the way up to we've got a major customer who's just cancelled a $5 million order, and you have to sort the problems out. I mean, people come to you with all kinds of problems. My computer doesn't work today, and yeah, when the company gets bigger and you've got hundreds of people in the company, then you've got others who are going to sort out lots of problems. But when you're starting out, and there's only 3 or 4 of you in the company, and you run out of toilet paper, that's on you. Now that's not on me now, but so now bigger problems, right? Our biggest customer canceled a $5 million order. That's on me, so you've got equipment, you've got material that's coming in, you've ordered material, you've hired the staff to build this product, you've rented a big space so you can build the product, and now this order's cancelled and it's going to affect, can you pay the rent, can you pay the supplier for the product, can you pay the material costs, can you pay the wages? Scramble to solve that problem, find other customers, do other things. So yeah, I mean it's a tough nut. You just have to work at it. But what drives me, I don't know. It's what makes me get out of bed today, because I have to prove to myself that I can do it and become successful. And well, we are successful now. We're been profitable now for 6 years. And we're expanding the company. We're the global market leader in this type of product. We sell it globally. We're installed in 5 continents. We'll soon be installed on 6 continents, and then we'll be installed on all 7 continents. So yes, it's just, you're trying to ask what drives it. It's difficult to explain what drives you. You want to succeed. You have to succeed. You work at it.
So in every organization that you've assembled, there probably is that kind of baseline, kind of arbitrary, creative approach to each one, but they must have their different set of challenges. Would you say that Paranaut has been predominantly a challenge that utilizes the same fundamentals that you've learned before starting Paranaut, or was there a specific challenge that you learned when building Paranaut from ground up?
Well, this is engineering here. Mostly this is an engineering issue. And so mostly you're trying to solve engineering problems all the time. So in my past experiences, when I was gainfully employed, I was doing engineering. I went through university doing electrical and electronic engineering. I specialized in analog electronic design. I hated everything to do with computers. I thought it was completely unnecessary. At that time, when I went through university, when we were programming computers, we were creating punch cards, and we would put those punch cards in, and you've probably never seen a punch card, let alone used one. And so that was how we were generating our computer programs, was on punch cards. And so I hated computers. I specialized in analog design. I was an expert at designing amplifiers. My first job was designing radios for the military, and that was my job. And then I went to do analog design on chart recorders. And then my boss, who was working on the computer part, quit. And the VP of engineering said, "Okay, Milnes, you've got to do the computer part now." So during my time, I've done analog design, I've done digital design, I've done software design, I've done system design. I worked at a semiconductor company for a while doing semiconductor design, and I've gainfully employed, done supervision of all those aspects: mechanical design, software engineering, hardware engineering, and semiconductor engineering and system engineering. And then I quit to go start my own company, my first company, in 1987, and have used and continue to use that background knowledge of skills. But it's really a case of engineering skills that you know the fundamentals, but it's thinking about problems and solving problems all the time. That in this engineering here, we have a variety of different problems, and we still have problems. We can't be denied that we build a product and something goes wrong, or you build the first 5 and things look wonderful, you ship it, and then out in the field people seem to be having problems, and you're racking your head as to why has everybody got the same problem, and you're trying to solve this problem remotely. Or we have the cloud computing, which helps us enormously to solve problems on our customer's site. And it could be anything. It could be anything from electrical or mechanical or plumbing, all the way through to the biochemistry.
So when it comes to the phases of PowerNot's development based on the learning curves, or not, maybe you just kind of killed it and just did a great job every phase. How would you categorize the phases of PowerNot from beginning to now?
I would say that the biggest changes are really in the electronic hardware. Obviously, okay, that's not true. Probably the biggest changes are in the mechanical engineering. That we built our product, and it was a rock solid product, and we had many hundreds installed, and then we put them on a ship, and we put them on a ship, and the ship rattles constantly, and our machines just fell to pieces on the ships, and all kinds of problems. And so we went back to the drawing board on the mechanical side of it to be able to strengthen them and make them robust. Then in other parts of the world where we sell it, we have problems with the electronics because there's lightning strikes on the power supplies, and our electronics were getting fried, or people are putting too much heavy stuff in and we can't drive the motor. And so we're revisiting the electronics all the time. And as I said, we're on our 7th generation now of the electronics. And I think we kind of understand it. And we've added features throughout the time, constantly adding features. With our machines, we weigh the amount of waste that goes into the machine. And we report that by the hour, day, week, month, and year. And we send that up to the cloud so the customer from anywhere can see on the cloud what's added, with the eventual goal that you can control. You can't control what you can't measure. And so you need to be able to see, if the machine is digesting 200 kilograms every day, except for Tuesday, and it's 300 kilograms on Tuesday, then we say, okay, well, why is it 300 kilograms? Well, that was the day the chef took off and the sous chef took over. Or that was the day we served seaweed for lunch instead of whatever else, right? And so we can conclude the people don't like seaweed, right? For example. So um, so we're offering all these capabilities to the customer and adding all these sensors to be able to make the product operate more reliably and give our customers the information that they may need to be able to reduce their waste, which is the long-term goal, but also to show them how much they're diverting from the landfill, because that's important. They need to know what their CO2 offset has been, how much have they diverted and saved in terms of CO2, so they can report that to their stakeholders.
What would you say the parts of the business, parts of the product, parts of the basically those two aspects, would anything specific that you've been really centric on besides just like just centric on in general in terms of overall company, right? Like what have you been very centric on as a culture, and what do you feel like you've been neglecting until like nowish?
Well, okay, so the thing that drives all the companies is sales, and at the end of the day, it's the customers paying us money, which allows the company to stay in business. And that was with the company where I failed. Arrogance took over, and we thought that people would beat a path to our door because we had a better mousetrap. And we did have a better mousetrap. We were definitely recognized globally as having the best technology in the industry, but people didn't beat a path to our doorstep. And so you learn that lesson. I learned that lesson the hard way by losing all my money. And so um, with PowerNot, yeah, we're focused on sales. And so we have distribution throughout the world. As I said, we have installations in 5 continents. We've expanded our markets into many different areas of selling it. And there is a focus on sales, but that's not what makes a company great. You have multiple areas in a company. Um, Obviously, to drive the sales, you need the marketing. You need to be able to get the message out to come to people that you have this product, so that they are aware of it, that you can then sell it to them. You need to focus on the finance, because I could go and buy $10 million worth of material to build the next widget. But if that means that I don't have enough money to make payroll this month, then that's no good. So you have to pay attention to the finance of it. You have to pay a lot of attention to the legal matters of the business to make sure that you're complying with all the laws and regulations, not only for hiring people and managing the business here, but also for product that you're selling is going to comply with all the laws and regulations of where you're selling. So, all the CE mark and European Union requirements, for example, which are used in most other parts of the world, are also important. You have operations. You've got to keep the lights on. You've got to keep paying the rent and make sure that when the roof is leaking, you get through to the landlord to make sure they get that fixed. So yeah, there are multiple parts in a business, and I'm involved in all parts of those businesses. And obviously the engineering is part of it, that you have to build a product that is the best product in market, but at the same time realize that that's not why people want to buy it at the end of the day. Our competitors who have a significantly inferior product to us are still selling their product. Why are people buying their product and not our product? It's the same as an automobile, right? Someone might drive a Toyota and someone might buy a Ford. Well, why is you might think that the Toyota is the most reliable product on the market, so why are people buying Ford? And the guy who's buying the Ford might think the opposite. And so there's competition that you have to come up with. But at the end of the day, the success of the company is based on everybody working together, everybody being in tune, everybody playing to the same tune. And it's excellence at every level that makes a company succeed. Not just the best engineering, not just the best marketing, not just the best sales, not just the best support, but it's excellence at every level. Everybody has to be good. Everybody has to realize that their job matters. Everybody's job in the matters, from the guy who's sticking the label on the machine before it goes out the door, to the guy who's designing it and billing the customer for it. And we all have to work together to make sure that the customer's perception is that we're a great company.
So, Iain, what is PowerNot? So give us an overview of it. And let's just start with that, and then we'll get into a bit of the products and perhaps even the service afterwards.
Well, the company itself, we're based here in Fremont. I started the company 2009, and although we started it with a different mindset of selling a different product, we merged over to designing and developing the Lfc Bio Digester, as I've described. We now have 4 different products on the market. We have a bin tipper on the market, which serves to put waste into a container, and that's a hygienic thing. It's a stainless steel thing. We have a newly introduced filter for disposing of water waste and pumping it up to a different level. We have another new product in development that's not announced yet. And for the Lfc Bio Digesters, this product, as I described, is a product that eats waste food, sits in a kitchen. We sell it to commercial and industrial users of producers of waste food. So everybody from a corporate cafeteria through to military bases in their dining facilities, hospitals, aged care facilities. I already mentioned cruise ships, supermarkets. Anybody who's producing large volumes of food, has large volumes of food waste, then our machines are digesting it. We have 8 different sizes, digesting anywhere from 20 pounds a day. I'm putting it in pounds now. I'm thinking 20 pounds a day up to 6,000 pounds a day, 8 different sizes.
Wow. So let's go into the Lfc biodigester, but before we go into some details and specifications around it, let's talk about your journey in discovering the markets for it. So I think that this is the most interesting part of the business, is how you enter the market and convert people to want to even digest their food as opposed to just throw into the dumpster, right? Because everyone's acclimated to a particular culture and behavior, right, and action in this world of sustainability and working on work related to the climate. So when it comes to this specific product, how did you discover and I guess iterate on the market focuses of the Lfc biodigester?
Well, yes. I mean, we started, as I said, with the hotel, and in California here, and we expanded rapidly. So then I said, okay, where are there a lot of hotels? Well, there's a lot of hotels where people go on vacation. Which state in the country do people go on vacation most? Obviously, California is one, but Florida is even more. And so there's a lot of hotels in Florida. And so we branched out initially and started selling into Florida, and have hundreds of installations up and down Florida. We sold a lot of machines into Florida, mostly into hotels. But then also we have our product in the largest stadium in southern Florida, well-known stadium, football stadium, and we have it in supermarkets as well in Florida. And schools, several schools. So then we expanded internationally because, we then started to sell into the U.S. Army. U.S. Army had a mandate to go green and reduce their carbon footprint, and so we sold many machines into the U.S. Army throughout the country, not only here in the U.S. but also overseas, where we had bases overseas. And then we decided to sell internationally, because 2 things happened. Firstly, in the US, well, okay, let me take a step back. To avoid the climate catastrophe, people are going to have to do things differently from what they were doing them before. we can't all continue to do the things that we were doing 20, 30 years ago and hope that the climate will recover. It won't. So people need to change their ways of doing things. And here in the US, there is a reluctance to do that. We're very fortunate here in the US to be living in the world's largest economy. And so people have got used to that. In Europe, there's been a push for much longer to go green. And there's a lot more regulations and a lot more attention to it. So we started to get distribution in Europe, and we're very successful selling many machines, especially back into my home country, the UK. Starting in 2014, we sold many machines into the UK. Then we started branching out into continental Europe with distribution there. Australia was also a good market for us. We saw a great environmental consciousness in Australia. And then the Middle East, we opened our own office in the Middle East where there is an environmental consciousness, even though they have lots and lots of money because of the oil wealth. And so what happened here in the US is that in late 2016 and early 2017, the US learned that climate change was a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese, and the mandate for the US Army to focus on being green went away. And a lot of the companies, a lot of the hotels also followed suit, that now there wasn't this focus on climate change. And so for 4 years, the US went into the doldrums in terms of climate change, and people didn't pay attention to it that much. Some people did, obviously, but it now came down to not a case of, hey, this is something that we should be doing to preserve the climate. It just came down to dollars and cents. It cost me $1,000 a month to send my waste to the landfill. Your machine's going to cost me $1,001 a month on a lease. Therefore, I don't need it. And so that was the typical market in the US for 4 years. It's changed since January of this year. We seem to be getting back on track. There's a greater awareness and attention to climate change now in this country. And now we're seeing more interest from customers in the US than we've seen in the previous 4 years. Of course, the pandemic hasn't helped. Many of those hotels in Florida are not now at full capacity. Everybody suffered, so they're not tending to buy capital equipment. It's low on their cost, low on their expectations of what they should be spending money on. And so the market has changed, but the market hasn't changed in Europe. I mean, we're selling more in the Netherlands than we're selling in California, for example. And so, to give you an example, and the Netherlands, a country about the same size as California. And so, so the market has changed. We're still selling it, and the cruise ships, of course, we were selling huge numbers to the cruise ships. We were specified in on the world's largest cruise ship operator, and of course, in March of last year, that all changed. When the cruise ships no longer set sail. And so pandemics affected this whole planet in a very different manner. And so things have changed. I can't remember what the question was. Actually, Derek, I can't remember what the question was.
Market advancements of the Lfc Bio Digester.
And so you're talking about where the market has shifted. So yes, the market has shifted dramatically over the years, and we just have to adapt. During the pandemic, a lot of the restaurants shut down, so the restaurant business for us shut down. But on the other hand, the supermarket business grew. We had sold to several supermarkets, and one guy said, early on in the pandemic, he said, I'm glad I'm in the supermarket business and not in the restaurant business. And because people, instead of buying their food restaurants were now going to the supermarkets to buy it, and the supermarket business was booming. So the supermarkets had more turnover, and therefore they had more waste, and so that was a big market for us. Hospitals have been a big market for us as well,
Mm.
to put it in. They want something sanitary in their facility rather than having dump trucks come in and out to pick up their stuff. And prisons have been a good market for us lately as well. The US has the world's largest prison population, so that's good for business, and not necessarily good for the US, but it's good for our business. So yeah, the market has shifted dramatically, and for the prisons, for example, we build a machine which has got a security package on it, so it can't be tampered with, and
Mm.
inmates can't throw one another into the machine and have the machine try and digest the inmate. So our biggest
You could
machine,
probably
our
you probably
biggest
get into the horror movie business as
yeah, our
well.
biggest machine can digest 1 ton a day.
Oh,
And
cool.
so that's about 20 people a day could go into our machine. And
Jeez.
if you've got one of those in a prison, you have to be very careful about how it gets used. So, yeah, so we got security packages on the big machines.
Very fascinating.
Yeah,
Eh, eh,
so the way that the market has shifted, and the way we've needed to adapt and modify the product to suit the market, has been a big deal for us.
So there's these really strong verticals, it seems, right, in terms of markets and industries for this particular product. Tell us more about how you would approach it from a jurisdictional view, right? So you're from Fremont, Paranaut's in Fremont. I'm sure you have interest in Fremont and advancing its climate action goals to maybe even go beyond it in some cases in the area that you all can control. And there's behavioral change that needs to occur. There's schools, there's city halls, perhaps. But there's all these different, you've been focusing on verticals. So what about the approach of kind of a holistic view of engaging like a community or a city? Is there feasibility in marketing into a particular community and having the ecosystem that in which that jurisdiction is to adopt a technology like this? Or it's just that isn't the right approach for a product like this?
That's not really the approach for a product like this. Having said that, we're in constant contact with the mayor of Fremont, Lily May, and she's been a great help with her and her team. We're in constant contact with them, and they would like to promote our product in the schools, and in any other strong environment, strong food service place here in Fremont. Unfortunately, the local water district has so far decided not to approve the use of our machines for use here, and it has joined only one other water district in the entire US where our machine is not approved for use.
That's odd.
So we have, for instance, a machine up in Berkeley, and the water authority there had no problem approving the use of our machine. So yeah, we'd like to sell it on our home turf, but haven't been able to do so far. We're about to install a machine in Antarctica, for instance, right? And we have machines, for instance, on the Great Barrier Reef, which everybody I think on this planet would agree is an ecological UNESCO heritage site. And we have on Hayman Island and Hamilton Island, which are resorts in the Great Barrier Reef, very environmentally conscious. On one island, we have 6 of our machines on one island, Hayman Island, and yeah, and they have no problems with our machine discharging the waste into the sewage system. But our local guy has a problem with it here. So, we have it. We installed a machine up at Atacama in the Atacama Desert in Chile. where it's operating up at a height of 4,000 meters, where they have the great big satellites. They're looking out into outer space. And
Well, it sounds like something needs to get something external needs to occur for us to figure out what the solution is for that. I
well,
mean, because it
we
sounds like
start,
it sounds like it's EB Mud that took it in, right? But I know that Fremont may be another water district, I believe, right? So
yes, yeah, Union Sanitary District, yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but as we started out, Derek, you know, the easy answer is to say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly where we started out. The easy answer is to say no.
I believe persistence goes a long way. A no is typically a no as of right now,
Yep,
so I think
we
that
haven't given
that's
up.
so let's get into the product a bit more, because I'd like to be able to get into how our young people in our community, specifically Fremont, can be useful, in the advancement of this technology that can help advance our communities and our, really our entire, country at least, and so forth. So the Lfc Bio Digester, give us that short and sweet pitch. What is it? What's the main values, what's the main benefits, what's the main features, and how does it work?
It's a big stainless steel stomach. It eats
Mm,
waste food. But whereas our own stomachs is anaerobic, this is aerobic. And so the difference is that if you walk into a forest, all the leaves of the trees have fallen onto the forest floor, and they are decomposing. They're being digested by microorganisms in an aerobic manner, that is, in the presence of oxygen.
mm,
And when you walk into the forest, it doesn't smell. If you take some waste food and you put it into a plastic bag and you seal the plastic bag and you put it into the sun, and then you open up that plastic bag a few hours later, it's going to really stink, because the organic material is decomposing anaerobically in the absence of oxygen, and it's creating a number of different gases, among which are methane and hydrogen sulfide, which stink and pollute the atmosphere. And that's why nobody wants a landfill near them. We have a landfill here in Milpitas, one of the largest in the country. We have a landfill here, and when the organic material goes on the landfill and it gets buried, it decomposes anaerobically and it smells. And that's why nobody wants a landfill in their backyard. Okay, but people would love to have a forest in their backyard. And so inside our machine, it's decomposing aerobically in the presence of oxygen. So you simply open up the lid, throw the waste food in, and walk away. That's it. And our machine does everything else. Inside the drum is huge. As I said earlier, our biggest machine can digest 3 tons a day. And it's a huge, great big drum. Our smallest machine is the size of a residential dishwasher. And so you put the food in, you put your waste in, close the lid and walk away. And our machine does everything else. Inside the machine, we have chips, and these are highly porous pieces of plastic which house the microorganisms, and they help to distribute. Those chips are a regular shape, and they help to distribute oxygen, moisture, and the food to give a large surface area for the microorganisms to digest the waste quickly. And there are paddles. There's a shaft for paddles, and the paddles turn all this mixture very briefly. We're not trying to macerate the food. We're not breaking it down like an incinerator. We want to digest the waste food. So we turn the paddles very, very slowly, and we turn the paddles only for a quarter of the time. And so that helps to mix up stuff and gives the microorganisms time to do the digestion, because we don't want to physically break the food down. We want it digested. At the bottom of the drum is a mesh, a fine mesh screen. And as the food is digested and turns into water, it passes through the mesh screen and then it gets washed out. We have plumbing on the machine, so the water is supplied to the drum. So there is every microorganism on the planet needs water to survive. And so we supply water into the drum periodically. And there is water that goes into the washout cavity. As the waste falls through into the cavity, we wash it out periodically as well. So the machine uses water, it uses electricity, and it's got 5 computers to control all of this stuff. We have a motor computer, we have a I/O computer, we have a main computer, we have a display computer to control all this stuff. So there's lots of electronics, lots of software, and it all connects up to the cloud. And so there's lots of cloud computing associated with it as well. And but it's a big stainless steel stomach. That's what it looks, a big shiny piece of material. It doesn't smell, it's hygienic, it's clean, normally situated in a kitchen or a place where food is processed.
The most fascinating part is the microorganisms. Can you go into any specific around that? Like, it's kind of odd because the microorganisms is part of the process of the aerobic digestion, and I would say it's probably the key aspect, right? So it doesn't seem like there's much that is needed for it to operate, because if you're doing tons, how many do you have to change out the microorganisms? Do they reciprocate and recreate themselves and produce, they do their business in there and replicate, what?
So we when we got started, we thought we were smart. We thought we could just buy these microorganisms that eat fats, and these that eat protein, and these that eat carbohydrates, and we mixed them together and we threw them into the drum, and we looked and nothing happened, because these don't work with these and these don't work with these. And so then we realized that we don't know much about microbiology. And so we went to a third-party company and said, this is what we need. And so we have a special blend of microorganisms from this third-party company. And there's a lot of technology in there. But the microorganisms are all naturally occurring microorganisms. There's no genetically modified microorganisms. They're all on the EPA TSCA list, so they're all approved for transportation. They're all approved, the engineers tell me it looks, in a bottle, it looks like a thin yogurt. The engineers tell me that it's safe to drink, but I've not seen any of them drink it so far. Certainly it's safe to handle. It doesn't matter if it spills on you or anything. It's not going to do anything bad. And so the microorganisms on our machine go in once a year. Our competitors are putting them in every week into their machines because they don't understand. I don't believe they understand the technology that we understand, and they don't have our technology. So we supplement our microorganisms once a year. The microorganisms are reproducing in the machine, and given the right conditions, which are guaranteed by our software and hardware working in unison to get the right conditions inside the drum and make sure that the drum is optimum, then the microorganisms will continue to reproduce and need supplementing only once a year. So it's a really minimal cost for our customers to be able to operate the machine.
Wonderful. Thanks for bringing that down. So the last aspect I want to talk about is the Lfc Cloud, because it seems like this is the potential future of how you're going to manage the system, the networks, and advance really the market, but also the customer experience and so forth. So is there any particular roadmap of is there anything that the Lfc Cloud can't do right now that you want to keep, that you want to do more of? And what are some of those aspects that you like to upgrade on the Lfc Cloud side? And are there any barriers too?
Well, for our customers, the number one reason for our customers is that from their desk, they can create reports of what is being digested. And they can use those reports one click. We use Google Cloud services. So with one click, you can create a report on your Google Drive that you can edit and manipulate and put into a report for your stakeholders. And so that's why our customers are using the cloud. But in all honesty, that's a small part of the cloud. The bigger part of the cloud is the diagnostics. So that, when a customer says, oh, it's not working, we can look at our diagnostics. And the best analogy that I can give is if you go into a florist and you buy an exotic tropical plant and it's nice and lush and green, and you take this plant home and the plant dies, and you go back to the florist a month later and you've got a pot with a stalk, there's nothing on it, and you say the plant died. Okay, the florist doesn't know whether you put it out in the sunshine, it's not supposed to be in the sunshine, you put it out in the snow, you overwatered it, you underwatered it, you poured boiling water on it, you can't tell, right? It's a living, growing thing, and it's tough to diagnose what has gone wrong. In the same way with our machine, it's a living thing. The same things can happen. You didn't put enough water in, you put too much water in, you put boiling water in, you poured the stew in. Why is it not eating? Why is it not eating the waste food? And so for us, we can look at the cloud, we can see how often they've been feeding the machine, how hot the waste is that they've been putting in, how much water has been going in and when. So we can look back and we can see all this stuff so that we can support our customers and be able to help them. One example early on, we had a sale in Australia, and the distributor in Australia said, this machine isn't eating, it's not digesting. And he had visited the customer site several times, and he would go there and he would test the temperature of the water going in and the right amount of water, and everything looked fine, and the machine just simply wasn't working properly. And so what happened was, we said, you have to connect this to the cloud. And what happened was, when they turned the lights off in the restaurant at 6 o'clock at night, that also turned off the water until they came back on in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. They turned the lights on, the water came on. Our distributor would go there at 9 o'clock in the morning and not see any problem at all. And so, without the cloud, we would never have seen that. We just would never have. And since that was one of our first examples. And since then, there have been scores of other examples where we've been able to, hundreds of other examples where we've been able to help a customer sort out why a product might not be working properly to their satisfaction. It's a big stainless steel stomach, and like our own stomachs, it relies on being fed throughout the day. You can't just put all of your waste into the machine in one go. It relies on being fed throughout the day, and so that it can digest constantly throughout the day. And the more frequently that you feed it, and the longer that you feed it during a working day, then the more it will digest. Just like ourselves, if we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, go down and eat a packet of biscuits, we're likely to eat more than we would have done otherwise. It's not something I would recommend you do all that often, but we would digest more in that day than otherwise we might have done so. Same with the machine. If you can feed it at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's going to eat more. And so, we have machines that are digesting 3 times the normal capacity that other customers are getting, or 4 times in some cases. The machine's a living microorganism, biological thing, and that's part of the understanding of this technology.
That is the most fascinating part about why the case for the Lfc Cloud and whatnot is that it is a living organism, and you need data in order to understand what went wrong. It's not, so that's really, really interesting. And I would assume that it's very important to choose the right size too in that scenario.
Yes, well, we help our customers do that. As I said, the process is aerobic, and out of that process is generated heat, carbon dioxide, and water. Those are the major outputs. And so the process is exothermic. It's keeping the temperature going. So we do have a heater on the machine that's primarily used to get the process started. And normally the heater's not used, which saves electricity. Once the process is running, then the microorganisms are generating sufficient heat to keep the process at optimum temperature. On our machine, that's about 43 degrees C, 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And so the exothermic reaction, now if you have too little food going in, then that exothermic reaction, you have one bug over here generating some heat and one bug over here, but the overall machine is not at that optimum temperature. So if you have too little food going into the machine, the temperature is going to drop, the process is going to drop, the bugs are going to die off, and customers not going to be happy. So yes, getting the right size of machine. That's why we offer 8 different sizes of machine for all different sizes of customers.
What is the next best use case for the LFC Cloud beyond just diagnostics and maintenance and helping your customers internally with PowerNot?
Well, what we added early on with the LFC Cloud, when you look at the LFC Cloud, it's great. We've poured thousands of hours of engineering into it. But most of our customers don't want to sit there as we do and look at the cloud every day. So one of the things we added early on was the ability to send email alerts to a customer. So that if something's gone wrong with the machine, for instance, if an operator has left the door open, you're supposed to open the door, put the waste in, close the door. If somebody's left the door open, then the machine stops for safety purposes and it starts to get cold. And so that's a common alert that our customers would get. The supervisor would get that alert saying, hey, the door's been left open for 30 minutes, and go and sort the problem out. So that's one thing, but also alerts if it's due for servicing. The service schedule is one year. That's the time that you would normally adjust the mechanics on the machine, check the mechanics of the machine, and also supplement the powerzyme, the microorganisms. So you would get an alert and say, hey, service is due in 30 days. So the cloud is very much used by our customers, and we're adding to the cloud all the time. As customers need new features, both on the machine and on the cloud, we have added those features where in the case of, if it's on the machine, we add a new feature on the machine, then obviously the cloud has to be updated to reflect that. Or if we add a new feature just on the cloud itself, then we just reflect that on the cloud. One new feature that we've added recently is the ability to use the machine only with an NFC card. So an NFC card like a credit card, for example, but we supply different cards, or you can have a key token. And with that card, you can operate it. And so one use for the card, for instance, maybe Derek's got a card and Iain has a card. So we know, Derek put in 100 kilograms today and Iain put in 50 kilograms today. Another way of using it is to say, okay, this card represents that we're throwing away fish, and this card represents throwing away meat, and this one vegetables. And so you can account for it that way. Another way is to say, okay, this is going into a hospital, and this is the waste from Ward 1, and this is the waste from Ward 2, for example, or a food court, for example, Chinese restaurant or the Indian restaurant or the Thai restaurant. Now, how much waste each of those has put into the machine. So that's a new feature we've added onto the machine, where now you can not only account for the source or the type of waste, but also dispose of the waste at the same time. And that's a key feature for those customers that need that. That information all goes up to the cloud so they can create those reports as well. So maybe we say, okay, Derek, you put in a ton of waste this month, you're going to have to contribute X dollars to the operating cost, and Iain has only put in half a ton this month, so he's going to contribute less than you. Whether it's billed to you directly or billed to that department, for instance. So that's a key feature for our customers. That's a new feature we added to the cloud recently to expand it.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing that down. I want to get into now the project itself for the actual students. And Cecilia may or may have not talked to you about this, but we'll iron it as we go live. Okay. So this also may ask you about the intent of how we can actually work. Like, what can students do for PowerNot, right? Is going to be the main question here, right? But let me state what Cecilia and I drafted out, okay? And we could even do some adjustments live, if you will. So what we're asking students to do is to reduce the carbon footprint in their own city. by utilizing organic waste data that's predominantly captured by the LFC Bio Digester, I would say, or the cloud, and utilize the organic waste data such as volume, the rate, the amount of carbon dioxide diverted, to essentially have the students derive a proposal or a pilot proposal for the use of biodigesters in their local food industries, such as hospitals and tech companies and other campuses with full service cafeterias, to advance the city or county's climate action plan. So basically, the summary here is we're planning on having students basically take organic waste data coming from the LFC Cloud or from PowerNot's machines, and taking the volume, rate, and amount of carbon dioxide diverted to essentially propose PowerNot to local organizations around Fremont to use the tool and then advance their goals and the city's goals around climate action.
Yes,
so,
I think that the very first place they should start is they could do an analysis of their own school, right? How much waste is generated every day in their own school, and how much, where does that waste go, and what does it contribute to global warming in terms of CO2 equivalent, and then if they put a biodigester there, what would the carbon footprint of the school then be? And based on the price of the biodigester, what does it make economic sense to do so? And obviously, you know, if you've got 10 students in the school, you don't need 10 reports, but yeah, they could collaborate on that. But yes, then move on to other schools, the colleges here locally, and maybe some, if they can get into some, maybe their parents are working at a place that has a corporate cafeteria, maybe they can then go and do it for that corporation and see if it makes viable sense. So then they're learning the analysis part of it. What is the waste? Where's it going? The environmental part of it. What's the carbon footprint? And then they're learning the economic part of it. Does it make financial sense to do this? And if it doesn't make financial sense to do it, how are you going to convince the establishment to do something different than what they're even doing? Maybe a biodigester doesn't make sense, but if you're sending it to the landfill, that really doesn't make sense. So what are the alternatives from landfill or biodigester if the biodigester doesn't make sense? And if nothing makes economic sense, what's the real answer? You know, I'm not going to be around in another 100 years or another 80 years, but these students are going to be here in 80 years, and the planet is going to be a very different place. It's their planet. What is it that these establishments should be doing if they can't justify a biodigester and it's still cheaper for them to send it to the landfill? What should they be doing instead? And what's the carbon footprint of that alternative? So yeah, there's a lot to be done there, without actually having to come to our facility. Obviously, be delighted for them to come to our facility and see the machines and kick the tires. We don't have tires on our machines, but but to kick the tires on the machines and see them.
Podcasters, huh? So schools are absolutely right where the students should focus. At the same time, they can start with the schools, but then start looking, like you said, maybe their parents are tech parents that work for a corporation somewhere, and they have a cafeteria, right? Start to expand, have the school become the centerpiece of what they can, the use cases of what the students can knock out, because it's the most readily available. And they could even think about how it can be integrated with curriculum, for example, right? And how teachers can support it, and how it can be maybe in a public location in the school, so people can throw it in there and people can see it digest and really kind of wrap around an entire experience around it, right? So that young people can actually learn about it as well. Now, one thing I want to mention is that students know their schools way too much, enough to not want to even touch it, right? When it comes to real problems that they want to engage with in the real world. So I guess the next best question would be, after the school has been a use case that some of the students in our program with you, right, tackle the school, what would be the next opportunity that young people can create proposals for in their own local community, whether it be Fremont, whether it be Oakland, whether it be, you know, Palo Alto, whether it be East Palo Alto, whether it be San Leandro, Hayward. And by the way, I want to give you some context too. Fremont is our highest performing school district in our program. Like there's over 63 interns from Fremont in our program right now, which is the highest amount from any particular city. So we have a huge presence in Fremont, but we have students coming from 60 other schools in our internship right now in 40 different cities in the area. So they are coming from a range of areas. So I guess as a template, right, or some priority focuses, schools number one. What's number two? What's number three?
I mean,
what are some
expanding
other...
on from schools, I would say universities, because we have case studies which are published on our website for schools. We also have case studies for universities published on our schools. We have one university, University of Lincoln, Nebraska, UNL, University of Nebraska Lincoln, and they're a very, very, very strong favorite of our machines. He's bought, I can't remember, I think he's bought 3 or 4. He's buying 3 or 4 more. You know, he loves it. Why are the universities in the Bay Area not using it, for example, right? What's the difference? Yeah, so after that, there are food processing manufacturers. I mentioned the place up in Berkeley. It's a pie manufacturer making pies. They have waste remaining over from the pies. So there are other establishments here in the Bay Area that could also be candidates for analysis, whether or not the company wants to buy it at the end of the day or not, but the analysis can be done. Right. I think that for the student, understanding the environmental impact, you know, a lot of people just simply do not grasp the environmental impact of sending organic waste to the landfill. You know, a business might decide, or a hotel might decide, let's change the LED light bulbs. Let's put LED light bulbs everywhere. Good idea. Let's put a few solar panels on the roof. Great idea. Okay, what are you doing with your waste food? I was going to the landfill. Okay, and the impact of sending the waste food to the landfill is hundreds of times more of an impact on the environment than anything else that they can do in the hotel. Hundreds of times. You know, if you're sending half a ton of waste food to the landfill every day, that is equivalent to driving around the US, driving entirely around the US 164 times. That's the same CO2 equivalent from a car driving around the US 164 times and sending your waste food, half a ton of your waste food, to the landfill every day. Wow. And so should we improve the fuel consumption of cars? Yes, we should. Should we put LED lights in? Yes, we should. But before we do those things, let's get all this waste food and organic material out of the landfill, because that's a huge impact. I mean, organic material going to the landfill has the same impact as the entire airline industry. Let's get this into perspective. You know, what can we easily do here, right? There are products like our products which solve the problem instantaneously, right? Instantaneous. Much harder to solve the airline problem, right? You can't change the airline industry overnight. If you ground all the airlines, that's not an alternative, right? But we can get the waste food out of the landfill. That is something that can easily be done overnight and make a big impact on the environment.
So let me spell out a step-by-step process and let you kind of validate whether it's a good approach for the students to embark on, and we can make edits and tweaks along the way. Okay, so our program, students build projects for an employer, PowerNot in this case, and they develop this project to then win internships. Okay, when they go into the internship over the summer or even during the school year, we're going to start doing that. They're going to, in the internship, they execute on the project that they started. So the project here that we want students to do we're going to make them do it in internship with you, right? And so it has to deliver some level of true, tangible, clear value. And so what we're talking about is all really clear, right? So I want to spell out a step-by-step process. It would seem like when a student watches this podcast before they start their project, they're also going to watch a bunch of vlogs that Cecilia can make, for example, to specify more about the details. We'll have Cecilia provide some resources and some links and content so that they can further study. Once the students have chosen this project, researched and understood everything about PowerNot through this podcast, vlogs, content resources, they're going to now start researching local industries, local verticals, local organizations and entities and establishments that could potentially use a solution like this biodigester based on their problems, right? And based on the need and the perspective. So they're going to do research first, right? Then at some point, they're going to have a priority list of use cases or case studies or use cases that they like to approach. So we talked about schools, we talked about, the like a university, we talked about, food processing, manufacturing, we're talking about hospitals or tech companies and whatnot. They're going to choose, right? They're going to choose one, they're going to choose multiple maybe, but they're going to prioritize it, right? And then they're going to develop analysis somehow, right, of that organization or that specific organization's basically kind of a level of what do you call it? Throwing out waste. They're gonna measure somehow how much waste they throw out when it comes to food, so they can make a analysis, right? Utilizing some level of a framework that PowerNot has to offer in terms of what it can do to solve that issue, right? And then once they have that analysis in perspective of what PowerNot can do, they now have some level of a proposal or some level of a, hey, this is how much you can save in terms of, deterring carbon into our atmosphere. This is how much money you can save. This is, the volume of waste that you have right now and what that will convert to afterwards. They're going to provide this almost like this plan or proposal, right? And then whether it's before the internship or during the internship, they'll refine that proposal, and figure out how to make it better, basically. But then we're going to have them actually engage those organizations, right? So this is where the internship kind of comes along as a value. We're going to have these young people go into their communities and engage people like it's basically a marketing project, right? Or some level of a sales project.
Yes.
And so am I spelling out that, does that sound like a good process to you in terms of what you want students to do in your program?
Yes, I mean what you've described is a business management, business case project. Yes, which is combination of understanding the product, marketing and sales aspect of it, justifying to a customer why this makes sense or why it doesn't make sense and what else may make sense for the customer. I mean, obviously, if it was an employee doing this for us, they would not be doing the analysis and saying, well, yes, we've decided that what you should be doing is composting, for instance. We wouldn't go that far with the customer. We would reach that conclusion very early on in the analysis phase and wouldn't do the detailed analysis. But what the student might do is to do the detailed analysis that makes sense for that particular application, even if it doesn't involve the biodigester being the optimum choice. But yes, in the internship, to be able to come in and now carry that to the next level and say, okay, this is why it's now an economic sense for these type of industries or these types of customers or this particular customer, and justify that as business development type of role would be a very good thing. It might involve using the Lfc Cloud and taking some data and making it anonymous, because we can't say, oh, this data is taken from this particular company. They don't want that to be known, and saying here's another company in your space, in a similar type of space, and this is what they've done with their waste, and look on the Lfc Cloud, and this is how much they're saving each month. Maybe even getting in touch with some of our customers that we haven't got a case study for, to find out, okay, how much was actually saved? What was the bill before and what's the bill now? And so be able to take it to the next step and make a real solid case, both environmental, operational, and financial, for the potential customer.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was going to ask, because we're going to, in this piece that I missed again in terms of our conversation with Cecilia, but they should definitely do some data analysis of existing data that's anonymized based on real information that you have, because that's going to support the arguments that they're going to have for the proposals for their respective, organizations they want to pitch, basically.
Yes.
Great. Wonderful. So Iain, this has been very informative, and I think this is going to share a lot of good information and context for students who are in your program when we get started in the school year. But is there any last particular thoughts you'd like to share with students who are in your program so that they have even more context or better, scope, right, of how you want them to spend their time?
Well, I think that the student must have an appreciation for, an understanding for, and a realization for the climate catastrophe. There's no point, if a student doesn't understand that, there's no point them working with us. Everybody here understands that. We're all committed to doing the best for the planet, and those are the kind of students that we want to work with. It's not just we're in business to make money, but at the same time we're in business to do other things in our life, and make sure that our lives are beneficial to ourselves and fruitful to ourselves. And everybody here is to different degrees a climate nut, and appreciates what we need to do for the climate, and how we should preserve the climate. And so the student coming in would be working with like-minded people, and would have that appreciation. And as I said, the climate's getting really bad. We're seeing fires and hurricanes and floods all around the world, and it's, if we carry on like this, in 80 years it's going to be bad. I won't be here, but the students will be. And so an appreciation of that is what's required, as well as an enthusiasm to get on with the tasks at hand.
Thank you so much for that closing note. I think you're going to find a lot of students like that, because environmental science classes are booming up. There's sustainability clubs. This is what students are interested in. So I think we're going to be hitting it right on the mark.
Good.
Thank you so much, Iain, for your time. Hour and a half almost. And so that always spells out a good podcast. So I'm sure your students are going to have a wonderful time learning about PowerNet, learning about how to do biodigestion, microorganisms, and so forth. So thank you so much. And we shall talk to you very soon. Okay.